nice guy, but unfortunately his intent is devious and malicious.
Yeah, and I know in these cases, in youth sports cases, it's often single parent, maybe not missing father, but single parent lives with the mom. They'll pick out certain. Yeah, those are the kids they pick out, and they
look for the most vulnerable kid.
Yeah,
and I know in law enforcement we used to teach a self-defense program, and when people would tell us that they want their kids to be obedient and they're very proud of their kid because their kid's polite and they will always, if you ask them to do something, they'll do whatever you want. But in law enforcement, those are the most vulnerable kids because they're so programmed to do what they're told to do. A sexual predator can spot that. They're very good at spotting weaknesses and vulnerabilities in children and adults, and they manipulate that situation. And they tell the kid what to do because they know the kid's gonna follow their rule. Actually, the safest kids out there are the belligerent kids. Kids will tell you to fuck off.
I was thinking that as you were saying, my kids they're all set. My kids,
the more belligerent they are, the less they follow what an adult says, the safer they are. They might be a troublemaker, and you're gonna probably have problems with them in school. And teacher's gonna, hey, Mr. Nardizzi, your kid's a pain in the ass, but he's a safe kid though. He's gonna be safe.
Who would think that Paul's a good parent? Not the first time anyone's ever said that. Here's the thing about these, and these are a lot of these women are professional players now, and it seems like it happens all the way along the line. These are adult, particularly males. I mean, these are males that are first you're entrusted with. The first thing you're entrusted, the most important thing when you're entrusted with a minor is that you keep the minor safe. So obviously that's out the window with these abusers. But it's interesting to me because we've seen it in there, and I see two types of abuse. I see the abusive coach who's just the a-hole coach. I see that and I know it exists in male sports. It has for years, but I see it in women's sports a lot. And part of me wonders, well, is this, today's 20-year-old who doesn't like, being yelled at? Or is this today's 20-year-old who looks and says, this guy's an abusive jerk? I know in some cases, both the abusive, the verbally abusive is also sexually abusive and is also a predator. So I just, when I see it, I'm thinking, how can this exist in a structure where there should be safeguards, where there should be protections, both for the underage girls and the women? Why does it exist, and why does it still exist, and how come it hasn't been ferreted out until now? Yeah,
people are inclined to believe what they're being told. If a group of parents are told that, hey, this is the coach. He's a great coach. He's respected throughout the industry. He has a lot of connections. He can help your son or your daughter get into a good high school, a good college. He has connections in the pro ranks, and parents will back off. They'll kind of have a blind eye to what's happening, and they won't see what's happening right in front of them. They may see it, but what they do is they'll convince themselves. Their instincts will tell them, hey, this guy, he looks like he's looking at my daughter real creepy, or he's very friendly with my daughter. He's hugging my daughter. Mm-hmm. He seems to be more attracted to my daughter and giving her more attention than the other girls on the team.
Yeah.
And they dismiss that, and they think, oh, he's just a nice guy. He's helping my daughter. And they're almost a little selfish sometimes. Oh, my daughter's going to go Division I. My daughter's going to be a pro.
Right.
And they back off, and a guy like that sees that, and he manipulates that situation. So if he started when they were 12 or 13, by the time they're 14 or 15, he's already groomed them. He's intimidated them. I'll hurt your parents. I'll hurt you. I'll hurt your family. You'll never play soccer again.
Yeah.
And they buy into that, and now he has them hooked.
But now these pro coaches, and the pro coaches have the same imbalance. I mean, I can, maybe the star player, I can't cut if she doesn't, if she's not responsive to my advances. But the player on the bubble, I mean, maybe there's that. But even with any relationship like that, you've still got a system that protects these coaches, these men, and I think sometimes women. They protected the doctor at was it Penn State? Was that the gymnastics? State. The gymnastics, yeah.
NASA.
I mean, it's just bizarre to me that this stuff that it still occurs.
I don't think it's bizarre at all.
That it still occurs? How can they not ferret it out?
You're talking about an occupation that is a dream for people, right? So they're afraid to lose that dream. They might even know their teammates being molested, and then when he starts on them, if I say something, I'm gonna be off the team. She's still on the team because she's letting it happen.
Right.
It's not a janitor job. We're like, I'm just gonna blow the whistle and go to get another janitor job. It's a thing you work so hard to get, and that 14-year-old to be on the national team at 20 just unfortunately kept her mouth shut.
The thing is, there were professionals. There were professionals in this organization who should have set up some sort of a safeguard for these girls and women who are playing the sport.
You would hope, but
clearly it's not.
You know, the bottom line in law enforcement, and it's kind of an analogy we use, the more potential helpers, the more people that know about something that can help, they usually don't, because they assume, oh, Dave will help, or Jim will help, or Paul will help, and they just back off. It's not my responsibility. Yeah. When they know that a lot of people know, it's like, who's going to say something? And no one says anything because they always think the other guy's going to say it. Yeah. If there's one person who knows, and he knows he's the only one person, and the buck stops with him, he's more inclined to say something. But in this setting, in the gymnastics setting, there was many people who knew. In the soccer setting, many people who knew. And this coach, when he was probably a coach in the high school or the junior level, people probably had suspicions about him. Mm-hmm. 30 parents probably talking about it at a potluck supper, but no one said anything. And he just passes on. He becomes more confident. He grooms more children or more kids. He manipulates them. It's almost like a cult. They break you down emotionally, physically. Yeah. They hold a little carrot in front of you, which is, professional soccer, Division I soccer. And unfortunately, people, they might sacrifice their safety for a spot to play in the national team, like Paul said.
And, Sandusky was a good example. There were a lot of helpers, a lot of people knew. Yeah. And it took all the way until that quarterback saw something in the locker room and said something.
It takes that kid
4 years of going.
One of Nardizzi's kids to walk up to him and say, "Hey, this ain't right." It takes a kid with some balls, whether it be a girl or a boy, or a parent who's like, "We're not going to stand for that," and they confront the person. And then, like the coach in the North Shore, he was confronted. People confronted him, and he did what some people will probably saying he should have done that. And he took his own life.
Right. So it saved. It's an interesting, I mean, on the one hand, you say he saved a lot of people a lot of grief because the kids didn't have to stand up front and center.
But human nature is like, the guy lost his life, but who knows how many kids he victimized throughout his time as a baseball coach and a representative for youth sports.
Yeah, it's...
There's no, obviously, single solution, but wouldn't you agree that the best thing everyone can do is to stop trusting everybody and just don't let your kid go away with some adult?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll use my daughter as an example. She approached me from the time she was in 8th grade to 10th grade on 5 different occasions and asked me, "Can I go out with this boy?" 5 different boys. And she was 0 for 5 because I did my homework. I asked other police officers and people about this kid, and no one gave him a glowing
So your daughter has a type?
So she was 0 for 5. Yeah. And then she finally presented a young boy to me, and I looked him up, and I said, he seems like a nice kid. Everyone's telling me he's a nice kid.
Do you like check their teeth and stuff when they come over, like you're buying a horse?
Check their criminal record, Dave.
I had to use the bathroom earlier. We're in Dale's house, by the way, and in his bedroom, I think it's those 5. They're on the wall. It was all connecting lines going
with the red yarn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I hate to say it, but sometimes parents or adults like that who are a pain in the ass and they're always in your business, those are usually the ones that are very, very aware and in tune to the devious nature of certain people, and they pick up on it real quick.
Well, I coached boys for most of my life because I have sons, and then my boss said coaching girls is better. I said, "What do you mean it's better?" He says, "Just trust me." So he throws me this girls team, and about 2 weeks in, I called him. I texted him. I said, "Wow, this is unbelievable. They don't fool around." You always have that one boy that just kind of pisses you off. I felt like I had really good kids. Yeah. But it would drive me nuts because I'd never seen this before, coaching boys. But I would look over sometimes and the other coach would hug a girl coming off or talk to... You don't touch the players. Period.
Yeah,
doesn't matter how old or young, whatever. You're a man and their kids. You don't touch the players.
Yeah, it's almost like when you teach someone about self-defense and personal safety, young kids, and the basic thing, does that person make you feel creepy? Yeah. Does he give you the creeps?
Right.
And if they give you the creeps, that's your instinct.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking a lot of these girls in soccer and in gymnastics, they were never taught that. They were never taught the kind of the bad side of people.
You think so?
They have to have been. How can you go?
It's a terrible way to learn a lesson.
Well, it's like in law enforcement, you learn the bad side and the good side of people, and you keep something in the middle, and you try to live your life as sane as you can, and you try to teach your kids that, and you try to teach the community that. And I'm thinking a lot of these girls were probably never taught that, either by their parents or within their community. Because if they had, someone would have been aggressive toward this person.
Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe these leagues should have a day or a session where they tell these women when they're they tell these women when they're girls. But here's the other thing that, don't allow this. This is not right. This is not right. This is not right. Make your coaches go and your players. Maybe they do this already, but it just seems like, somewhere between being afraid of everybody, stranger danger when you're a teenager and you don't want to be near anybody, and the idea of, I'll get in your van. There should be something in the middle there where we can kind of live. And it just seems like, again, the more I see it, the more I think, and you're one thing I've heard about coaching girls, by the way, is people who've coached both say, this is a while ago, so maybe it's changed, but they say girls are really good at doing the fundamentals and doing the drills the way you want them and just being cooperative.
Yeah.
Versus boys who are more likely to put a little flourish and a little creativity into the drill, but are a little bit unruly. And so I think is the what's that?
Correct term. Pricks. I think is the correct term.
Yeah, pricks. Okay.
You don't ever refer to a girl as a prick. No. You know what I mean? Boys are pricks.
Yeah. All right.
Some of Dave's girls might be referred to that. Some of Dave's girlfriends on Facebook. Jim would say that.
We're not talking about girls. We're talking about adults. But this is the other thing. I mean, the idea of people who are in college and above, these women clearly are they're not adolescent girls. They're adults. And the idea that anybody would work, it's like college professors dating students. It's like, I know some people say, well, when they're your students, you don't date them, but afterwards. I think there was a quote in the Boston Globe a couple of years ago with somebody who said, when they're your students, you can't date them, but once they're not in your class anymore, they're fair game. That was the quote. And I know a lot of college professors just say, no.
You would think, Dave, and it's not necessarily the case, that I've done many sexual assault investigations, whether it be like pornography type stuff and people dating and they've, sent naked pictures to their boy. These girls are 25, 30, 40 years old. Yeah. It never ends. You have street smarts and the ability to kind of see a situation for what it is. If you don't have it at 14 and you don't have it at 18, you're not going to have it at 25. You're not going to have it at 30. It's not always the older you get, the smarter you get. Yeah. Sometimes the older you get, the less you're even aware of what's going on, and you're easier to victimize.
Because you've developed it as a habit?
Yeah, you've learned to just accept whatever your reality is. Yeah, no, it runs the gamut. I've seen 60-year-old ladies get manipulated in dating type situations and sexually manipulated by guys, and you're like, wow, she's 60 years old. You would think at some point in her life she would have been able to see the red flag and be able to identify a person like that, but they don't. If they've never been taught it, or if they've never experienced a bad situation, they may never even recognize what's happening.
Dave's not a sexual predator, but would you say he has a bit of a red flag if you would?
Yeah, I mean, if he's an 18-year-old guy and I see little 18-year-old Dave and he knocks on my door for my daughter, I'm just going to kind of, hey, you're in the wrong house, brother.
You're going up on the wall.
You're the number 6 on the wall.
Now, listen, I think the good thing about this is that women are coming forward, and hopefully these organized leagues, particularly, and like I say, particularly now we're talking about the National U.S. Women's Soccer League and the other pro leagues, groom these abusers out. And I'm going to say both. I mean, the sexual abuse is obviously criminal, and these abusive coaches, the SOB coaches, it's like, I think even going back to Bobby Knight, when Bobby Knight got celebrated for throwing chairs across the basket